Hello everyone, my name is Shelby and this is the series where I reveal what is inside these mystery pottery molds I found on Gumtree. Hello and welcome to part 39, and we've got a little tiny baby mold today. It's an Albertus A12. It's got two tiny holes on one side, so I gently pour those up with a very slow thin stream of clay, and I give it a little bit of a tap because the smaller molds make it a little bit trickier for the clay to get into all the crevices, so giving it a little jiggle and then topping it up once it's been jiggled. I have now let that set, and I use my rubber kidney to scrape off that excess so the part will come away easily to reveal these cute little bee critters. It is so gorgeous. Let me show you the mold so that if you are looking to get this piece in your collection or wanting to hunt it down for your own hobby or artworks, this is what it looks like. It is Albertus A12. It's really tiny. It's got 4 little notches on either side. The two bees are slightly different. They're very similar, but they are slightly different on closer inspection. One is slightly longer and one is slightly shorter, to sort of explain it. And one's got sort of a bigger detail. I don't know what the bug parts are, but one of them has like more of a like shell detail at the upper wing. I don't know how to explain that, but anyway, when I poured these up, I knew exactly what I was going to do with them. I had previously ordered this wire, so this is called cantha wire. Cantha wire is a type of wire that can go in the kiln without burning or degrading. So degrading is probably not the right word, but without falling apart. So I ordered some samples. The first sample was no good. It was already bent in the bag on the way here. It was very thin. So I'm deciding to test these two samples out so I can decide which ones I want to order for future reference. So I can figure out which wire I want to use for my purpose. So before I add the wire and do the little details, I decided to patch up the little pouring spout hole on the back at the bees. This is for aesthetic reasons. You don't need to do this. I just wanted the bee to have a complete finished look, so that the back side looks as good as that front detailed side where the wings are, because when it hangs on your neck or as an earring, I wanted it to look good from behind as it does from the front. So to let the air out of those pieces, because you can't have a solid piece in a kiln, I just do a little pinhole, and that should pretty much cover up with the glazing detail later on. So don't come for me for my tools. I don't have the finances or equipment to do full-on jewelry right now. I'm literally just doing this for the content at the moment. I think I will look into investing in some really good jewelry tools, but I am using my partner's mechanics tools to get these together so that the wire cut apart, and then I use the flat end to twist them. Sorry for all the jewelry makers that are literally cringing at me right now. I'm just literally making do with what I've got, and that's okay. You got to do that to start off. So I'm twisting the ends and making a hoop. Now, I would make a smaller hoop usually, but with these, I thought instead of just having the hoop as a function, I wanted it to have a purpose and function and sort of make it look like it was like the little bee antennas coming out of the head. So that's why I did these hoops really big. I wouldn't usually do that. I'd probably work on a more dainty, smaller design, so it's less of a, I guess, like a statement hoop, that it's just more something that connects it. So I put these in the bisque kiln, so because they're quite small and delicate, and already from one bisque fire, the wire has changed from a silver to a blacky green. And I can already tell that the thinner wire I'm not a fan of, because as I was holding these and painting them, it was sort of moving, whereas that thicker wire had really held its space. That's not to say that this wire isn't good. It's just not good for the purpose that I'm using it for on this piece and what my intention for the piece is. So another reason why I bisque fired these is because handling them is really tricky, and bisque firing them just gave them the integrity they needed to paint. So I went to fill up my water bucket and I noticed this bee had sadly passed away in the water bucket outside, and I decided to bring it in as a reference. And I know that it probably sounds really morbid and weird, but we get a lot of bees around here, and sometimes they do end up in the water bucket, and I'm usually really quick and can catch them before they've passed away and save them. So I was really sad about it, so I decided to pull him out and use him as a reference so that he could live on his life as a reference for my beautiful queens. And I put him next to me and he started to come back to life, and he started to do this little dance, like signaling his friends that he was okay. And I was so relieved because he flew away shortly after I saved him. And I'm so glad I got that footage, because I didn't really need to show you that, but I just thought it was so interesting that happened the week that I did the bee reveal, like the bee mold, that this bee, I rescued a bee during this video. like, who am I? This is a movie. So the bee lived, and it was a really nice story. But regardless, I actually got some really nice reference shots of the bees so that I knew exactly how to paint bees. So I'm doing a antiquing detail because I want it to be black. So I started off with that, sponging that away, and then I'm adding the color on top. As I'm adding the color on top, I've seen a few people do this on YouTube where they do the antiquing first and then they add the color, and then the antiquing sort of shows underneath the color. But when I beautified these, I decided to do another antiquing round because you can probably tell here, you just lost all that black detailing. So I ended up double handling these really beautiful pieces because I ended up doing 2 lots of antiquing to get the result I wanted. But that's okay. That's why we're doing this, because we're learning things, and now you're learning things because I'm learning things, and that's just wonderful. So I use a dark brown for their heads to make it distinctively different, a yellow on half, and then a blue on the other half of the bees. If you're not from Australia, or maybe you are from Australia and you're probably going, why are you doing blue bees? In Australia, we have a species of bee that is actually that magical. They are called a blue-banded bee, and they help pollinate our native Australian flora and fauna, and they are blue. They have an iridescent blue color, and they are so gorgeous. There's a lot that live near here where I live, in regional Victoria. I'm not sure whereabouts in Australia they all live, but they are so stunning. I'm gonna have to put a photo on here. I'm gonna have to source a photo just so that you believe me, because a while back I actually made my own bees and I put them on my Australian fauna pieces that I have created, and I really fell in love with these blue-banded bees, and I really wanted to bring them back, but I just have not had time. And now having this bee mold, I didn't do it for this video, but I am really excited to sort of attach these to my Australian fauna pieces on little koala ears and koala noses and all sorts of things like I've done in the past. So that makes me really, really excited. But yeah, that's why I did the blue ones, is because blue-banded bees. So here I am double handling things, like I said before, where I've gone back in and done the antiquing detail again because painting the color on, I lost a lot of that gorgeous detail I had just added. So I'm doing that and looking at them, they feel kind of dark compared to my usual bright style, but I'm really digging it. It feels like a piece that you would find at an antique market, a really delicate heirloom style piece. So I'm really liking that vibe that's created. With the wings, I decided to give them sort of a little bit more of an edge. I added an opal iridescent glaze. So sometimes with this glaze, it will react in a certain way that will give it that iridescent that bee wings have. So I'm adding that to all the wings. I'm applying it quite thick because I'm kind of hoping that it will drip a little bit here and there, because when it drips, I just like glazed drips personally, because to me they go a person made this, and it has something that makes them really special compared to something that is sort of mass produced. Everything about handmade is special, but for me, glaze drips just show an extra element and depth to the piece, that you know that someone has made that and they have applied paint there, they have applied their glaze and materials, and it is reacted in a unique way, like us as humans. So once the glaze has dried on the wings, I begin dipping them into the bucket, and my bucket of glaze that I've got mixed up, and I let them dry for a little bit, and then it's time to pack the kiln in the most precarious way ever, because my kiln is tiny and packing bead things is really tricky. So I have more cantha wire, so I'm hanging the little bees that I got the cantha wire hoop on them. I'm hanging that on more cantha wire in the kiln. So yeah, as I said before, the cantha wire is a type of wire metal. Don't quote me on this, I'm not a scientist, I just read things and learn things, and this is what I know. I'm not an expert, but the cantha wire can withstand the heat of the kiln, whereas some other metals and wire can not. So take from that scientific explanation what you will, but that is the wire that you use to make jewelry inside your pottery kiln. Now with this, I do not recommend my jewelry tree. I made this in a rush and it has done the job, but it's sort of not the best, and I need to adapt my design. There's lots of designs out there to do your own jewelry tree, so all you pretty much need is somewhere for the pieces to stand, the wire to hook on, and space for your pieces to hang. That's all you need for a jewelry tree. Anyway, jewelry trees make me really nervous and anxious regardless, and also not knowing how this wire is going to react, so fingers crossed. And I had nothing to worry about. They turned out really good. My wire didn't even, so sometimes with the cantha wire, what can happen is it can bow from the weight. There was no bowing of my, like the main cantha wire that's hanging on. I'm sort of pulling them out and inspecting them as I go. But yeah, as you can see, my jewelry tree is really make do. You can make your own. They're really easy, or you can buy them. Up to you. But here is what they look like. Aren't they gorgeous? They're a lot, yeah, like darker to what I thought, but they've kind of got a real, what is the word? Like a dark academia feel, like a, what are they called? The bug people that, I'm looking it up and then I'm starting this recording again. A taxidermy. The taxidermy bug people. You know how they preserve the bugs and they are so delicate and gorgeous and fascinating to look at. There's so many more words to explain what they are, but they look like the little preserved beetles and butterflies and bees that those people collect and create and preserve. It's so gorgeous. And just so we're absolutely clear, I mean the ones that source them ethically, not the ones that go out of their way to kill bugs. This is going a really weird direction. Anyway, with the wire, testing them out, the thin wire does still bends. It still bends, but the thicker wire does not. So I will be continuing with that thicker wire, but maybe it's because the thinner wire is long and flimsy, that's why it's probably bending, and it might be really good on a smaller design. The other thing I love about these is the sound they make when they're all together. Have a listen. They have a beautiful sound and they are beautiful to touch. They are gorgeous. The way that iridescent glaze has dripped around these pieces and has sat so perfectly on the wings to give it this little hint of whimsy and magic. They are really stunning pieces. I'm really happy with them. I'm going to turn some of these into necklaces, and I think they're a bit heavy for earrings at this point in time, but maybe if I poured them really, really thinly, so real thin coating, they would be perfect. So I don't wear much jewelry because I'm actually allergic to metal. Weird thing to be allergic to, I know. I get rashes and reactions to every kind of metal. I've tried every kind of piercing, like as in metal piercing in my ear, and they haven't worked. So I went to Spotlight and grabbed a couple of little like jump rings and chains to test them out, and I did a little tester necklace on this sort of like gold antique look chain, and it is perfection. They are so gorgeous, like they are so cute. This is the kind of jewelry I would want to find and buy. It is perfect. I love them so much. What do you think of these? Let me know in the comments. Make sure to like and subscribe and do your thing for more of these reveals, and thank you for watching. And this is your sneak peek for next week, the cheeky little thing I'm doing to get you back watching the next reveal. See you then.